living regenerative architecture and decentralized finance.
That's right. We're opening up the technical blueprints for what's being called the myco-economy.
And this isn't just a theory, is it? This is a serious proposal.
Oh, absolutely. It's an operational architecture for fusing cryptocurrency, living infrastructure, and urban planning into a kind of self-governing economic organism.
Okay, let's unpack that. The sources we have are focused on the idea of tokenizing urban infrastructure transformation,
Right.
specifically something they call cellular exostructure deployment, which in plain English means wrapping existing buildings in biological systems.
Mycelium composites, vertical gardens, that kind of thing. The goal is to create what the architects call self-governing urban colonies.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really get into the mechanics, the tokens, first of all, and then this governance firewall they talk about.
Precisely. We need to unpack the token mechanics, that firewall which is designed to prevent investors from just taking over, and critically, how this whole system actually generates a return by tokenizing ecological services.
Things that are normally just externalities.
Exactly. It's a very deliberate attempt to pull in green investment capital, but force it to align with long-term community and environmental health.
Okay, so let's start on the ground, the physical layer. What does this stuff actually look like? And more importantly, how does the system know it's actually been built and isn't just, a convincing CGI render?
Well, that verification is everything. The entire system is built on literal, verifiable construction as its proof of work. The core asset is what's called a primary cluster token.
Which is an NFT, a non-fungible token.
Correct. A non-fungible colony token.
So how do you mint an NFT for a whole city block? I mean, what are the requirements that actually give it its value?
Minting is conditional on hitting multiple benchmarks. First, the physical exostructure has to be completely built to very specific standards.
Okay, the hardware.
Right. Second, the biological systems, the gardens, the water cycling, they have to be fully operational. And this is verified by a whole network of sensors streaming real-time data on, say, air quality, biomass health, energy output.
That handles the tech. But what about the people, the community?
And that's the crucial third step. The colony has to hit a minimum occupancy threshold, which is usually set around 60% of the residential units.
60%.
And the community GAO, the governance body, has to be established and active. That 60% number is key. It's proof of social buy-in. It ensures the asset is populated and self-governing before the financial instrument even exists.
That makes a lot of sense. You can't just build it. You have to prove people want to live there and run it. So who verifies all this? The construction, the biology, the social side?
It's a multi-signature process. You need independent outside auditors. So an architectural engineer signs off on the structure, an ecologist validates the biometrics, and then a social auditor verifies the community readiness and that the DAO is actually participating.
And all that gets baked into the NFT itself.
Every bit of it. The GPS coordinates, the materials log, the audit certifications.
Yeah.
It's all in the token's data payload. Its value is then encoded as the total capital cost of building it, adjusted for inflation, and it's backed by the physical structure with a legal salvage value floor.
Hold on, a salvage value floor. That sounds like some pretty complex financial engineering. What does that mean in practice?
It's basically a safety net. It's the estimated value of the raw materials, the steel, the composites, if the whole thing were ever decommissioned. So even in a catastrophic failure, the asset isn't worthless.
So it gives investors a baseline of confidence.
It does. It's a hybrid of real estate law and DeFi contracts, which is why they're starting out in regulatory sandboxes to test it.
Okay, but what about the internal economy? What stops the residents from just flipping the main NFT for a huge profit and, gentrifying the place from the inside out?
That's where the local cluster coins come in. These are purely internal utility tokens.
For what?
For non-market labor. Things like maintenance, helping in the communal gardens, teaching a skill to a neighbor, participating in governance. It's a token for shared work, for care. And crucially, it is not tradable for fiat currency.
So it keeps the internal economy focused on cooperation, not speculation.
Exactly. It walls off the community's social fabric from the external financial asset.
Which brings us right to this governance firewall. The sources call it Trojan horse tokenomics, which is a pretty loaded term.
It is.
The idea is you use these big capitalized tokens to fund the green infrastructure, but then the governance structure is set up to completely reject capital's control. How on earth is that separation enforced?
It is the absolute bedrock of the smart contract. It's non-negotiable. The token holders, the investors, they can trade the primary NFT and they can propose infrastructure upgrades. But that is it. That is where their power stops.
So zero direct say in how the community is run.
Zero. An investor holds this incredibly valuable asset, but they can't decide the maintenance budget or what happens in the shared courtyard.
Who does then?
The community DAO. It's made up only of residents, and their power has nothing to do with token ownership. They make all the operational decisions, control all the resources, set all the internal rules, even if some outside fund owns 90% of the primary tokens.
But I have to challenge that a bit. What if a huge investor, say they own 40% of the tokens, proposes a project that would boost token value, like a massive new solar array, but the residents don't want it because it's disruptive or they can't afford the upkeep?
The DAO has the final veto, always. If the proposal has any ongoing cost, the DAO has to vote to approve both the project and the plan to pay for it. If they vote no, it dies. Period.
Oh.
It forces the capital to align with the community's actual well-being because a functioning, happy community is the only way the colony generates the ecological returns that pay the investors back.
That is a brilliant constraint. Okay, let's talk about the AI. The sources say this AI prospector, which is designed for pure financial optimization, keeps pointing to working class, redline, or immigrant neighborhoods as the best sites. That seems counterintuitive. Why?
Because the AI isn't optimizing for flipping property. It's optimizing for something called probability of long-term community function.
What does that mean? What metrics does it look for?
Well, it looks for existing social capital, active community groups, neighborhood leaders. But most importantly, it targets places where the benefits will be highest. For example, in a low-income area, energy bills might be 30% of someone's income.
So providing insulation and cheap energy is a massive, life-changing benefit.
Exactly. The buy-in is huge. Whereas, a wealthy neighborhood might just fight the disruption, they don't need it as much.
So the math accidentally creates this bottom-up development model. It flips the script on how green infrastructure usually gets deployed, which is, in the wealthiest areas first.
It's a complete systemic inversion. The AI's cold, amoral logic ends up leading to a surprisingly equitable outcome.
Okay, so let's get to the money. The construction is funded, the residents are in charge. How does the initial investment actually pay off without extracting rent?
This is the clever part. It works by turning those environmental externalities we mentioned into verifiable, tradable assets. It's called the subtoken system.
So you're tokenizing the ecological services the colony provides.
Precisely.
Okay, let's break those down. What's first?
The first are water subtokens, called AQUA. These are minted for every 1,000 liters of water that get evaporated through the structure's living walls.
So for cooling the city.
Exactly. And the buyers for these tokens are, say, water-stressed cities or big companies that need climate offset credits tied to water.
So the community is basically getting paid for performing a climate function. What about the green space itself?
Those are VRDE tokens. They're generated per 100 square meters of maintained living surface. And they're verified by biodiversity sensors, making sure it's a healthy, complex ecosystem.
And who buys those?
Carbon offset markets, or maybe city planning agencies that have to meet green space mandates.
Okay. And energy, volt. That's straightforward. Kilowatt hours sold to the grid. But let's talk about the nutrient subtokens. PHO, nitro, potass. The sources jokingly call these.
The shitcoins, yes.
So you're literally monetizing waste.
It's maybe the most powerful part of the circular economy here. These tokens are generated for every kilogram of nutrients recovered from the colony's waste streams. Human waste is processed, bioremediated, and turned into high-value agricultural inputs.
So you're turning a city's biggest liability into a profitable product for farmers?
You're closing the loop completely, and the revenue from all these subtokens gets split. 40 to 60% goes into the community DAO's treasury to run the place, and the rest goes to the primary token holders as their return.
This all seems incredibly dependent on sensor data, though. And as you said, sensors can be spoofed. How does the system protect its own integrity? This must be where that unfakeable proof of work comes in.
It absolutely is. The system has this unique cultural requirement built right in. The clock is the lunar cycle. Every full moon, the primary cluster token is set to spawn its subtokens based on the sensor data. But that spawning only happens if another condition is met. The community has to produce a unique piece of art, a performance, a mural, a sculpture, whatever.
A required monthly art festival to make the finance work. why art? How is that a firewall against fraud?
Think about it. You can fake sensor data in a lab for a while,
Yeah.
but you cannot fake the real human cooperation it takes to produce a new piece of community art every single month for years. It's impossible to sustain that kind of fraud.
So the art is the proof of life.
It's the proof of a healthy, functioning social system. The digital capture of that art gets bound to the token minting event. It's a cultural archive and a health indicator all in one.
That is profound. It synchronizes the whole network to human creativity, not just market logic.
Hmm.
But you still need human validators for the technical side, right? How do you stop them from being corrupted?
They operate under a reputation staking system. Validators, engineers, ecologists, they have to stake a significant amount of capital or reputational collateral. If they approve a fraudulent cluster, they lose their stake and they're blacklisted from the network forever.
And it's decentralized.
Heavily. No single validator can approve more than 10% of the total clusters, so you can't get a corruption cartel forming.
Okay. But what if a colony just fails, socially or ecologically? What happens then?
There are clear triggers. If occupancy drops below 40% for 3 months, or subtoken generation falls by half for 6 months, the main token goes into depreciation.
A signal to investors that the underlying asset is failing.
Right. But even then, because of that salvage value floor, it's not a total loss. The infrastructure is designed to be modular. It can be disassembled, and the materials can be reclaimed and redeployed to a healthier colony.
So let's bring this back down to earth for the listener. What are the immediate, tangible benefits of living in or near one of these places?
They're huge. Your building gets incredible thermal insulation, so energy costs can drop by 30 or 40%. You get a measurable reduction in the urban heat island effect, better stormwater management, cleaner air. It's a direct upgrade to your quality of life.
And what about the jobs that this myco economy would create?
They're local, specialized jobs that you just can't automate or outsource. Vertical gardeners, biomass technicians, people who manage the waste recycling systems, and crucially, paid community organizers who help run the DAOs.
So it keeps the infrastructure spending local.
About 60 to 70% of it, yes.
Yeah.
It mobilizes all this creative and technical talent toward work that's deeply rooted in a specific place.
And if you zoom all the way out, what's the big picture here? What's the systemic transformation they're aiming for?
In the short term, it's about accelerating climate adaptation through urban cooling and resilience. But more fundamentally, it's about introducing a patient capital model to displace speculative real estate. It's about creating commons-based property rights in cities and shifting work from extraction to care.
And the roadmap, how far off is this?
The technical proof of concept is happening now over the next year or so. The first token minting for a pilot cluster is projected for sometime in Q3 2026. After that, if it works, they'll aim for global scaling in years 3 to 5.
You know, this whole deep dive really highlights this incredible tension, this paradox at the heart of the project. It's using the most advanced, abstract tools of finance AI, tokens, smart contracts to build a system that actively fights back against capital's control.
That's the core of it. And we can leave you with this final thought on that idea of accidental socialism. The AI, which is designed for pure, amoral mathematical optimization.
Right.
It concluded that the best way to guarantee long-term token value was to ensure maximum community health and social function. The math forces capital to support well-being, not out of any sense of morality, but because the numbers demand it.
So the question for you to think about is this. Can we really use these amoral mathematical systems to achieve ethical, regenerative outcomes? Can we use technology to build systems of governance that eventually make the technology itself redundant?
A fascinating mechanism to consider.
It really is.